the co-chair of events. Oop, and we got the recording going. See, I even missed recording, so little news, so appreciate you, Grace. But before I turn it over to Laura, I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of information on us as an organization. We're an organization that is passionate about promoting the advancement of women. Our mission is to provide a centralized network and community where career-focused women can access resources tailored to their career and goals. By offering networking opportunities, mentoring, and educational programs, we help women navigate work opportunities that will nurture female leaders. And we have 2 chapters, one in Lowell and one in Cambridge. So a fantastic organization that I'm so excited to be a part of. And yeah, so a couple of housekeeping items before we get into it. Please turn off your mics and your video for the speaker portion of the event. We also want you to feel free to post any of your questions in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring those during the session. We can also utilize the hand raising mechanism, and we can actually answer or ask questions live. And I know Laura is definitely interested in that to keep the conversation going throughout this. We do have a couple of polls throughout the presentation, so please engage. And then this event is being recorded as it's saying here on my screen, and we'll be sharing this after the event as well as the presentation that we're going to be going through. All right, I'm going to quickly introduce Laura, and then I'm going to turn it over to her for this wonderful presentation. So Laura is currently working at Takeda Pharmaceuticals and is an innovation lead within the external supply and plasma innovation team under Global Manufacturing Sciences. In her role, Laura is responsible for relationship management with high-level stakeholders and driving digital innovation through Takeda's manufacturing operations. Prior to this role, Laura was a technical engineering lead for a program working on drug delivery systems used to deliver a gene therapy to the brain. She's also led several programs that focus on evaluating new technology in spaces such as neonatal development and dry eye syndrome. Before joining Takeda, Laura started her career in the medical device space, leading technical teams, designing and developing electrical, mechanical, surgical tools within the GYN women's healthcare space. You are extremely well-versed, and we're excited to hear you speak. So with that, I'm going to turn it on over to you, Laura, and excited to hear your talk.
Sure. Let me just share my screen. If you can just stop for a second, please.
You got it.
All right, share. Can you see it in presentation mode? Great.
You're good.
Well, thanks. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me today. It wouldn't have a last name like Duffy without wishing everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. So, representing the green, happy St. Patrick's Day to any and all. But yeah, just thanks again for having me. And I won't go through my background. You captured it well, Meg. But the goal today really is to talk about career transitions, and I've had a few of them. I will preface, I'm not an expert. I'm going to give you what my opinions are, but I really hope that you also will engage and share your thoughts. I think everyone's career journey is very different, and that's really important to understand. So I really want everyone to feel free to add comments to the chat, or when we do polls, come off mute, have a conversation, because we all learn best from talking to each other about what's worked for them, and what's worked for me might not work for you. So it's really great to learn from others as well. So highly encouraged. So today I have kind of 3 main goals for our conversation, really to try to talk, starting with mapping your career journey, then talking about how you can actually make a career transition, and lastly, deciding when's the right time to make that move. So I'm going to start first by asking the first poll that we have here, and trying to understand how many of you have made career changes in your past, and if so, how many have you experienced? I'm not exact, so I think someone else is kicking off the poll.
Give me one sec. I'm trying to get it.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
All right. You know what, Shruti, if you are on, it actually says that I cannot, I can't use the polling system. So I'm not sure if you're able to do it.
Oh, it's up.
See?
We can see it.
Oh,
I just put it up. Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, I can't tell, one away, so I'm not sure how many people have answered or what the general answers are. So if someone can put that in the chat, it just would be good to understand. But anyway, so I'm guessing you've all made at least one change, maybe. Oh, there we go. Yeah, okay, no one says none. Wow, 5, yeah. Kind of what I expected, a couple changes here and there. So awesome, thank you for engaging with that. Just good to kind of know where we are moving in. All right, so the first thing I'm going to break down is really mapping your career journey. And we're going to break this into past, present, and future. And I'm going to explain why we're going to do that. The reason I start with our past is because it's really important to understand where we came from. Getting a kind of more understanding why we made past moves. Did we make any mistakes in those moves that we've learned from since? And most importantly, recognizing your success. You know, success can come from a career change, or it can come from personal life that had an impact on your career. So really get an understanding of where you've come from to get to where you are today can maybe help you make a decision on how to move forward in your career. So the way I've done this is something called a life roadmap. I'll get back to mine in a second. Just wanted to bring it up quickly before I jumped into what it is. Ultimately, a life roadmap to me is a way to create your path from start to beginning, really documenting the highs and lows in your career and how they fit into other accomplishments, both personal and professional. The way I do this is kind of map out some of the key shifts in my life across a line, making positive changes be a little higher, changes that have been negative or things that have kind of been lower points in my life, move things down, just to kind of see, okay, maybe what were some of the reasons I made some of the changes in the past, and what mistakes do I want to learn from, and what has worked well for me moving on. So I'll take my real life example and walk through how I did this. So this is me. Again, some of these accomplishments here are both personal and professional. So I'm an active person. I like to cross country ski. I like to bike. I like to run. And that's a big part of my identity and who I am. And it's also had an impact on my personal and professional well-being throughout my life for a few reasons that I'll outline. So I was really proud of my team won states when I was in middle school for cross-country skiing and was part of that team. So a weird high point, but again, this is kind of where it affects my relationship with work is activity makes me less stressed at my job. So important for me. I went to Bucknell University for my undergrad in chemical and biomedical engineering. After that, as I mentioned, I started at a company called Hologic, which is a women's health company out in Marlborough, Massachusetts. This was where I gained so much experience really, really quickly with this job, had a lot of travel, but then I started to not feel super happy in my work. For me, I had kind of got to this point in my role where I was working a ton, but not getting the recognition right away that I was looking for, and traveling constantly. So traveling, internationally quite a bit, which became kind of stressful for me in my life at that time. I did get promoted there, moved on, got some great experience again. But we got a few projects out the door, and I found myself kind of sitting there in a position where there was no pipeline at the time, and I didn't know where to go next. I kind of rashly made a decision to go to a different company. I'd been with Hologic about 3.5 years. And this is one point where, looking back, I probably should have done more research on what I've done in the past. I kind of had a recruiter tap me on my shoulder for this role that I went to at Boston Scientific. Both of these, let me preface, great companies to work for, but that role at Boston Scientific was not the perfect fit for me. I really enjoyed the people I worked with. I enjoyed what they were working on, but I kind of only interviewed one place, took the only offer I was given, and didn't really kind of think enough about hard questions that I probably should have asked in the interview process. They were hiring a lot of people at the time. And so the people I interviewed with ended up not being the same people that I got an offer from. And I should have asked and kind of questioned it a little bit more. So it was an interesting turning point for me for my career, because I didn't stay there that long. And again, that was partly on me for not having asked those hard questions and done more due diligence to make sure the role was the right fit. I just wasn't happy, so I wanted to make a change. So again, I document this as a low point because it's something that I've learned from, but I do want to preface, great company, it was just not the right role for me. From there, I kind of got tapped on the shoulder to come to Shire, which is now Takeda. This job was so different. I had been an engineer through most of my career at this point, and this role was a little bit of a combination of two things. It was a business development and a technical role. So I was still technically an engineer, and it was in a different industry. So biotech to pharmaceuticals, different. But it had a new twist that I hadn't expected. I thought I'd be interested in. And I took a chance because this had a lot more strategy than engineering than what I'd seen before. I got into the role and I realized it was something I was passionate about. And to be able to continue to do that, I decided to go back to school part-time at night and get my MBA. Again, throughout this, I'm going to mention the exercise, that was my stress reliever, made me happy at work. Started my MBA, and the whole down spiral was a combination of having 3 knee surgeries and hitting a pandemic. As we all know, life changed pretty dramatically during that time. And so, I again started to not be super happy in my life and my work. And it had an impact on the way I was showing up at work, because we all, as the pandemic did with all, but I was also in school at the same time, as well as having multiple knee surgeries. So, it was something where I realized exercise and being active is really important for me to continue to be successful at work. And this was just a low point. But I will say this past year, things have kind of turned around. I graduated with my MBA at the end of December in 2020. And that's when I really decided to make another big pivot in my career and jump into a completely new part of my company, working purely in business development. So no longer am I engineer Laura. I've taken that hat off. I've put on this new hat as business development Laura, and seeing where it goes from there. And then again, another high for me, I just bought my first home. I'm now a permanent resident of Cambridge. And so, again, positive things that have helped me make me happier and help me be more effective at home. I now have an office, which is great. So it's important for me to understand where I came from, the low points, the decisions I've made, so that as I continue to grow, I can kind of learn from my mistakes and successes. All right, so I mentioned not being happy in a role. I'm just wondering, I know I'm not the only one, but have you ever made a move? I know we've made a move because you were unhappy in the position that you had taken. And I'd love if maybe in the chat, I should probably have the chat up while we're talking too. I'm wondering if anyone would like to maybe come off mute and explain, what did they realize? How did they realize they were unhappy, and what did they do, when they were deciding that maybe their role wasn't the right role for them at the time?
And it's skewed towards yes, Laura.
Sure. So I'm seeing someone say anyone want to come off? If not, I see a hand. I see Anne. You have a hand up?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I have kind of a similar experience to yourself. I had a really long tenure with a particular company where I, progressed in multiple different roles, and it was really great. But, I chose to take a different path, and I left that company, thinking there'd be so many more opportunities and, really looking forward to the next step in my career. And unfortunately, that was in February 2020.
Okay.
So right before the pandemic, and as you
Sure.
probably all can imagine, the available roles and the amazing companies that I was looking forward to, they just didn't materialize. So I had a child in that time as well. So it was just a lot of change. And it took me about a year to find a new role in a company that I thought would be okay. And so I took that role and kind of jumped into it head first. And, I'd really high expectations for it. And unfortunately, what happened in reality, it didn't meet those expectations. I was coming into it thinking I'd be, a formidable leader and a change agent, and could drive a lot of positivity there. And it just turned out to be the opposite, a very, very toxic environment. But I'm really happy to say that I just left that opportunity, and I'm looking for new opportunities. So very similar to you of just kind of being open to new things that are that might come down the path. But certainly I've made the move, and I was really unhappy, and I'm proud of myself to say that I've made an alternative move as well. So hopefully good things to come. But thank you for
Great.
letting me share.
Yeah, good luck. And I
Thank
think,
you.
it's really important to realize we don't always make the right choices, right? I think we always talk about our successes, but it's important to talk about times where maybe, I wouldn't say failed, right? This wasn't a failure, but it's something you learn from that may, have help you in the future. And so that's why I think this tool of mapping it against, up and down is really important, because I've learned something, and I'm assuming you've learned something too, as you look for your next role. And it's probably going to happen again, but I think it's really important as we think about our careers, what's worked for us and what hasn't. So thanks again for contributing today. All right, we'll move on. So now we've talked about our past, how we got to our present, and now let's think about, the future. To me, when I start thinking about the future and what the next role I want, there's some things that I tend to do to kind of outline, where am I today, and what do I need to do to get to some other role down the road. So for me, it's identifying what are my strengths, what am I good at, but also knowing what are my, development areas, what knowledge, skills, other things can I build upon to get to that next great role for me. And also really knowing what you're willing to and not willing to compromise on when you look for a new job. Right now, a big conversation is, are we going to be staying remote? Are we going to be going back to the office? I think it's, a question that some people want to be fully remote, and that may be something you're not willing to compromise on. Work-life balance is huge. Compensation, knowing what going into looking for a role, what you really need from that role is important. And what you're willing to compromise on is also important, because as you look for them and employers look for you, it's something that we both need to balance. So that would just be a few other tips of things to write down before you start looking. And also, maybe mapping out your plan before you make another move. It's kind of important to think about, well, that move is going to be next, but what's down the road for me? What are some of the opportunities that I should take to get to my ultimate goal in the next 5 years? So really thinking, I know we all talk about our 5-year plan, right? Really thinking about what we want to do, but maybe thinking about, again, what are some of the intermediate steps? What are some of the other maybe career changes we can make to get to that final vision in the next 5 years? Quickly, mine, right now I'm at a senior manager level. So my goal is to get to an AD level and really start to build a team. I've never had full-time direct reports, even though my title says senior manager. It's just something the way my company works. We're a pretty flat organization. I've had co-ops work for me, but I've never gotten that opportunity to have my own team. that reports to me, although I've led teams. So, asking my manager to get more experience, trying to see if I can have my own reports. I think that's important as you're going to start to lead other teams. So again, you want to move more into a director position down the road. To do that, I feel it's important to really understand everyone that provides some responsibility into those teams. So I have had my experience in engineering, now in kind of global business development, but there are a lot of other players in the field, manufacturing, the scientists, the finance team, that I would like to try to shadow to understand more about their roles so I can be a better leader. And then lastly, building a global presence to be able to continue to move myself forward. I work at a global company. Most companies are. I think being able to figure out a way for me are some of the development areas I know I need to work on in the next 3 to 5 years. Okay, so now we've talked a little bit about, some thoughts going into kind of finding that role. But now I'm going to talk about really how to make a transition. We're going to go through this 5 tips that I have for you. We'll start with brainstorming and searching for new careers or new jobs, how to rebrand yourself for that job, what type of development can you use to get you there, understanding the right move, because there's more than one type of move you can make, and then using your network, which is just probably the most important thing here that I can say. So first, brainstorming and researching careers. I don't know about your roles, but when I was in college as an engineer, I thought it was a pretty linear path. Like you became an engineer, 1, 2, 3, whatever. You started leading teams. What I didn't realize is how diverse engineering could be, but how diverse roles there are within organizations. I mean, I work for a 20, 30, I forget how big Takeda is, thousands of people company, and there are so many different jobs out there that could sound really exciting, but I had no idea they existed. So things that are important to me in a job probably exist in a job description somewhere. So the first tip I would have is writing down a list of what are some of the key buzzwords that you'd be looking for in a job description that excite you. Again, my role is innovation lead. I know innovation is a super buzzword. Basically, I'm working on trying to find new technology to help with our manufacturing. So innovation is a buzzword that I look for in a job title. Also healthcare, I want to stay in the healthcare space, things like that. Then taking those words and searching on job sites, so LinkedIn, there's plenty out there to find jobs that maybe have those buzzwords in them, and read and learn more about what that job is. I can't tell you how many roles I came across that I'd never heard of someone having that job before by just doing this simple little, exercise. From there, what I'd also recommend is doing the same thing with your company. If you're happy with your company, go into the career page on your site and start looking at the jobs that are available. Again, you might find something that you find surprising and that you might be interested about. When you come across these jobs, especially if it's someone in your network that tap them on the shoulder and ask if you can have an informal interview, learn more about what they do, what their jobs are, and what jobs they're hiring for, to see if it's something you're actually interested in before you apply. To me, this is how I got to where I am today, and I'll explain that a little bit more when I talk about my network. But honestly, if I hadn't done some of this research, I wouldn't have even known my title exists somewhere, and I wouldn't have been excited about just for me, just staying on the engineering path. So it's been really key for my shift to kind of do this research myself. It takes time, but it's really, really worth doing. Next thing, if you're trying to shift your kind of mindset on what you're doing, one thing that I recommend is branding yourself or rebranding yourself. Especially rebranding if you're looking for something that's very different than what you've done today, but still having some general brand statement of who you are, what your values are, and expressing those values and what you can contribute through a statement to be able to share with people when they come and ask or look at your LinkedIn profile. This personal branding statement is really important to present because it's how you present yourself and how you can distinguish yourself from others. Social media today is such an important thing, and we use it all the time, that it's really good to be able to have that tool in your back pocket that someone can look at and see what you do. And we know that marketing works, right? Every company is branding in a certain way, so why not do it for ourselves? This was an interesting twist for me when I actually changed again from engineering Laura to business hat Laura, and I'll explain a little bit why. So this is my personal branding statement. Before, if you'd asked me what I did for a job, I probably would have said, engineer would have been one of the first things, healthcare, women's health, I break things, I fix things, that kind of thing. When I was trying to make a career change, even though I had a new degree, I had an MBA, all my experience in terms of career had been as an engineer. So how do I get someone to hire me and trust me when I'm going from something very different to something that's brand new to me? So this was one tool that I used that I put on the top of my resume and on my LinkedIn page to really show who I am as business Laura. So I'll read it really quickly. My personal branding statement says, okay, accomplished healthcare business leader and strategic thinker with a strong analytical skills and a biomedical engineering background. A proven track record as a thought leader and influencer who thrives in a high growth dynamic environments while driving outcomes that support corporate objectives and goals. A proud advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and a long-standing contributor to company and community gender parity organizations. Enjoys a leadership position in a fast-growing biopharma where I feel I make a difference. So I'm going to break this down a little bit. I still have engineer in here because I still think it's important for people to understand where I come from. And I think being an engineer and being a businesswoman gives me a little bit of an edge on the way I think. So I want people to know that I have that technical background. I can think creatively that way, but I don't want you to think that's the only thing I can do. So I've had it in here, but I don't highlight it. Again, if you'd asked me my previous role, it probably would have been the first thing that you see up there. Some of these other things that are important to me, a thought leader is something that's important to me. An advocate for DE&I, and a women accelerator. I sit on 3 leadership teams, both internally and externally within my company for helping women in doing all of this. It's really a passion of mine, and I want people to know that it's a big part of who I am. So it's important for me to have that in here. It might not be important for you to have something this personal in there, but I think it's something that brands me the way I want people to see me. I'm not going to walk through exactly how to do this. I have some tools in my sources on sites to be able to build your business, your branding statement. But I would highly recommend everyone to take a look and try to do something like this. Again, this is on my LinkedIn page. So as soon as you click on me, this is one of the first things that comes up so people can read about me versus scrolling through all my history and seeing what I've done. Okay, so now that I've rebranded myself, I also have listed what I'm looking for in a role, maybe what are some of my development areas, especially if it's a new role, what are some of the ways that I can get and take on those skills? There's a statistic, and I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. I should have written it down, but it's a certain percentage of women apply for the job they're already capable for, whereas men apply for the job that they think they can do. So women already are qualified for the job that they're trying to go for, whereas men quite frequently aren't qualified yet, but feel they will be qualified. So it's an interesting thought that we feel we have to check all of the boxes before we apply for a job. You don't need to, I think it's a certain percentage, but knowing how, yes, there's a TED talk on that. And I think Sheryl Sandberg wrote about it in her book, Lean In, that I read a long time ago. But you don't need to have all those skills for the next role, but it's understanding how maybe you could gain some of those skills either when you get there or things you can do outside of work to help build that skill set to make you feel more confident in what you're doing. To me, there's kind of three areas. Further education. So I went back to business school. Doesn't mean you have to go back for a full degree. There's a lot of certificate programs or even just classes out there that you can take. On the ground training, almost every company offers training, or managers actually have a budget to offer training. I learned that pretty early on. I didn't know how to use CAD. I was a chemical engineer and I started working in mechanical engineering, and I was allowed to go back and take classes that my manager could approve. And I gained the skills that some of my colleagues had from undergrad that I hadn't gotten just by asking a question that I didn't know I could ask. So there's plenty of opportunities. Don't hesitate to ask if you're looking for development. And then shadow people. Ask to sit, be a fly on the wall. You know, again, this is part of your network. See if you can follow someone along for a day and see what they do, to see, okay, you know, that's actually a skill I do have and didn't realize I had, or maybe that turns into a mentorship and that person can help mentor you to get to that next step that you're looking for. It really opens a lot of different doors. All right, so now I've been talking a lot. I want to turn it back over a little bit and ask, okay, what development tools have you used to help make career changes for you? We'll pull up a poll, and I'd also love to hear, you know, if anyone wants to unmute themselves or raise their hand about what are some of the other tools that you've used to help build your repertoire to get to your next step.
Hi, Laura. This is Nihis. We just wanted to share there. We were in the same track at BU, and definitely the education is one thing, but I think one thing even beyond the education is the relationships that you make with your fellow colleagues in business school,
Sure.
particularly because it's part of a part-time MBA program. Majority, if not everyone, is working and going to school. And if you're in the same area of focus, you're essentially going to school with some colleagues, even though you may not be working for the same company. And so leveraging those relationships, understanding what your classmates / colleagues are working on, and doing the pseudo shadowing without actually going into their offices to shadow them. Those relationships have been critical in leveraging for potential, if you wanted to make a career change, if you wanted to make a position change, we just want to understand a different area of healthcare management, which is what my focus was. So I think those relationships, professional relationships, are key.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we don't learn until we learn from each other. So a great, thanks for adding.
Laura, can you see the poll results?
Yes, I can. Yeah, most people are saying 70% education is what's coming up the most. I'm seeing, let's see, higher education, shadowing, on the ground. Oh, sorry, there's someone. Okay, just trying to read through. Great. Well, thanks for sharing. You know, one thing that I learned with this change for me is that not every career move is going to be a forward move. And I think understanding this for yourself is also important as you look for your next career change. You know, we know about typical forward movement where you tend to stay along the same career path. This is done usually typically through like promotions or pay increases. You're gaining more responsibility around the same job that you're doing. But there's other decisions that you can make, you know, for you and what you're doing. For me, this last change to business development was a lateral shift. I didn't get a title promotion. I did get a little money, but you know, that's part of my whole negotiation strategy, and I could go into that as another topic. But you know, this was an opportunity to switch within my own company to learn about some different roles and responsibilities within my own organization. I stayed in the same industry, but my goal was really to broaden my, you know, development and learn more about my organization and take something on that was different. So, you know, I was happy to take a lateral shift here and just to be able to gain different knowledge so that I can move forward down the road in a different path. Also, a backwards move is not always a bad thing either. You know, stepping down can be kind of a breath of fresh air in some cases. And there's many reasons why. Some of these can be personal. If you're working 100+ hours a week, it starts to have an impact on your social life and your personal life. So sometimes you need to, for yourself, know that maybe you need to take less on, and that can be stepping down. Also, if you want to make an entirely new career change, something different, completely different industry, there's a good chance you might not be at the same level if you're starting somewhere new. I laugh, I don't know how many of you watched Friends at some point, but I think of Chandler Bing, and he was sitting at the desk, behind the desk at a job for a very long time, and then he gets let go, and he finds he's interested in marketing. So he becomes a marketing, an entry-level marketing person at a company, helping design, put a brand together on, I think, these roller skate shoes. He's maybe 10, 15 years older than everyone else there, but he realized his passion. You could tell, and again, it's TV, but you could tell he was really excited about his job for the first time. And I think that can happen to a lot of us. We see people shift in their careers and change completely. I think that's something that you might need to know for yourself, and that's okay too. So kind of understanding what type of move you're looking for is important as well. And I cannot emphasize enough networking. It's how I got my job, to be completely honest. I didn't really know what I wanted. I knew I finished grad school during a pandemic. I have an amazing network at my own company that I personally did not feel like leaving my organization at the time. I'm a very social person, that I thought building relationships would be a lot harder for me at a new company when we're all remote and sitting at home. So that was the decision I made. But what I ended up doing, which worked out fantastic, is I started by talking to people that weren't in my direct team and asking about what they did. And from that, every time I had a conversation with someone kind of explaining, what I'm looking for and what do they do, I always ended the conversation with, well, who would you recommend I talk to next? This led to me probably having a coffee chat, maybe, or what you'd call it, about once a week for about 3 months. A lot of work, right? But I learned so much about what is outside the world that I'd been in within my engineering bubble at Takeda, and what other roles were out there and what I could do to maybe get to those roles. I met with so many different people that I suddenly had a job come to me. It was someone knew what I was interested in. They tapped this hiring manager on the shoulder and say, hey, you should meet with Laura. And I wouldn't have found that job on my own through our career page. So I highly recommend. I know it's a lot of work, but it is totally worth it if you're trying to make some shift, like a pretty big change, but don't want to leave your organization. Or even if you do, you can use your personal network outside of work or through school or however to help you kind of do that kind of thing. Oops. So again, speaking at you a lot, I'm wondering, what other tips do people have when making a change? I've explained my things, my 5 steps that I would work through. But what other tips do you guys have? Please feel free to add in chat, or again, come off mute and contribute. It's okay if not. All right, well, that's okay. And then the last thing I want to talk about is when to make a move. To be honest, in my opinion, there's never a perfect time. We're all going to come up with some excuse as to why it's not right. Maybe there's something happening at home. Maybe we're in the global pandemic. I told you I made the excuse of not looking externally because I didn't feel like trying to find new people that during the time where we're all remote. It's okay. We can all think of that. But I really do think at some point you just gotta grin and bear it if you're looking to make a change. And to me, there's some really key signs, at least that I was aware of, that made me realize, okay, I need to make a change. So first, I love to learn. Part of the reason I went back to school is because I felt like I had stopped learning and I needed to find another way to continue to grow. And right at the time, it was not from my career, So I had to find another way to continue to learn. If I'm not learning, I get bored, to be honest. That's just who I am. And again, that might not be everyone, but if you're not learning and you're feeling really complacent, maybe it's time to make a change. Also, if you dread going to work, clearly something's not working. I think that is completely underrated. People are okay with like, nah, work. I've seen people who are so excited about what they do. I haven't gotten to that point where I'm just like, oh my God, this is my dream job. I'm so, so happy. I'm still learning, don't get me wrong. But when you see those people who are just that passionate about what they do, it makes me question, okay, well, what do I need to do to be that passionate about what I'm doing? You work, what, 40 hours a week, more than doing anything else? It's important to like what you're doing. Also, if you dread the work you're doing, probably aren't going to be happy as well. And then, what is your job impacting? How's it impacting your personal life? If you're so miserable at your job that you come home and that brings it to your home life, that can have negative consequences as well. So just being self-aware is really important to understand why are you feeling, like, how are you feeling about your job? And if it really isn't positive, maybe it's time to make a switch. Anyone else have any advice on, when's the right time, or what has driven them to really kind of make that change?
Hi, Nahitsu again. So I made one major move from finance to healthcare consulting, and one of the motivators for me was I mean, I worked 9 to 5 in finance, and then I volunteered with a healthcare organization like once or twice a week. And I was more excited about the volunteer work than I was excited about the day-to-day job. And I love the people I work with. I love what I was doing, but there was more of an excitement and a passion for the healthcare work. And I went to school for healthcare policy. So it was almost like a pull back to my first love. And so when, to your question, sometimes when there's more of an excitement for something else, that could be an indicator. It's not the only thing, but it could be an indicator. Obviously, you have to have some of the skill sets to do the work. You have to have some of a background or knowledge to do the work. And you also want to make sure that you're compensated appropriately. You don't just want to leave your current job, but a passion and excitement is always good because you want to wake up in the morning excited about your work.
Sure, 100%. Yeah, agreed. Thanks. Anyone else? No.
Hi, this is Bonnie. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Bonnie.
All right, hi. Yeah, I've changed careers, and I think one of the things is that you have to listen to yourself, because if you run these things by family and friends, they're like, well, why would you do that? You've got a great job now. Why would you want to change this? And I think it's something you have to really listen to your own issues and body and reasons for why you want to make the change, because like you said, there's never a perfect time, and it may not be a thing that is where you want to end up forever. But if you didn't make the change, you would never know, and it leads to you. And I think your mapping was awesome, because what it shows is that there's a continuum. I mean, even if it's a high or a low, there's movement. So even if you move and shift to another career, it may not be exactly what you wanted initially, but then you've started a process and opened yourself up to very different things, which I think we sell ourselves short on. So I've kind of lived on the motto of, I don't want to sit in my rocking chair and wish I had, That's
great. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Thank you for this.
Yeah,
Can I just tag on to what Bonnie said? I 100% agree with you. That was one of the things I said to myself. 20 years from now, will you be wishing you had made a move? And if my answer was yes, and I said, okay, make the move. And if you fail, you fail, but at least you won't live regretting.
And failure is part of life, right? Like, we know we're going to have points where we fail. And again,
exactly.
We should be talking more about those failures, because we can all learn from each other.
Exactly.
I think I saw someone else come off mute. Maybe. Okay. Well, really, that was kind of the way I was going to end it. I want this to be the rest of this time, to open up. We can have more dialogue, ask any questions. But first of all, thank you for having me today. I hope this was helpful in some way. Again, this is my experience and what's worked for me. So take the tools and tricks that may work for you. Again, it might not all work for you, but just some things to kind of think about as you're looking to make a change.
Yeah, this was fantastic. And I love just kind of looking through the chat right now and just seeing like women helping women, right? Like even just sending out some TED Talk links, right? Like this is unbelievable. So I think that facilitated, your session facilitated this great conversation even happening in the chat. So this is fantastic, Laura.
Great, thanks. Any questions? Anyone else want to come up and talk about what's worked from that for them and in their careers?
Yeah, hi, this is Anne again. I just wanted to add to your point on, how you can grow your skill set and your background and knowledge. I know you had mentioned education, shadowing on the job. I know what's worked for me personally is I like to, and I'm not sure if anyone else has done this in the past, but I like to look for people in the industry that I want to be in that have the roles that ultimately I'd like to have. And I'd like to kind of peruse their background and how they got to be where they are. And not to say that that's the exact path that I'd have to or you'd have to take, but it gives you kind of an idea of one opportunity or one way to get there, and kind of how you can maybe make some changes to that, or follow suit if that's your desire. I also really like LinkedIn Learning is really interesting platform to use for growing some insight there. And I really appreciate whoever said it about the volunteering. I think that's an amazing insight into how you can gain that experience as well as providing for your community.
Sure. What did you call it? LinkedIn Learning?
Yeah, LinkedIn Learning.
I haven't heard of that before.
So it's on LinkedIn, and I'm not sure if you have to be a premium subscriber or not, but you do courses or watch videos. I think they even have certifications on there. So there's some really good options for anyone that hasn't heard about it.
That's interesting. Yeah, some people are saying it's part of premium. So, okay.
I'm actually not on premium and I can get it. Because maybe I use it a lot just to search on people, but they'll ask me, hey, you get 1 month free. So that sometimes comes across. But Laura, one other thing, I love the fact you said, don't forget to thank anyone that you shadowed with or ask them for another person. That's always the best move to do. But I found that I was also, I felt like I was taking versus giving, right? So then I kind of thought about it, and I reached back to what a consultant had said to me years ago about quid pro quo, and, say at the end, is there anything I can do for you? And that really has shocked me, what people have said, like, oh, well, and I never thought that I would have something to give to them, but you never know what they're looking for. But it also makes it feel as if there's a fairness to it, that you're not just taking,
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely great advice that I've also heard. And definitely would add that as well. Thanks. Well, I think then that's it. So Meg, I'll turn it back over to you to share what's coming up next.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you again so much. This was fantastic. So we have, let me pull up my screen and we can kind of tee up what our next event is going to be. So hopefully folks can join us. Let's see, here we go. So on April 27th, we have another event on how to craft a winning pitch. And what's really exciting about this is that it's actually going to be a hybrid event. So there is an opportunity for you to be in person for this one, which we are so thrilled about, especially now that folks are starting to be able to be in person again. But like we said, there's going to be also the ability to join remotely. So like I said, April 27th, 12 to 1. And if you'd like to be in person, it's at the UMass Lowell Innovation Hub at 110 Canal Street in Lowell on the 3rd floor. So this information will be going out. There'll be an Eventbrite set up. You can register there, and hopefully we will see you next month for this fantastic presentation with Barbara Dalton Russell. So with that, thank you everyone so much for joining. And Laura, thank you so much. This was so great. And it even kind of got my wheels turning a little bit as well, from somebody who is not necessarily looking to make a career switch just yet. But definitely this is good stuff to just even have when noodling over what's next. So appreciate all the amazing tips. And like we said, we'll be sending out the recording, and then Laura is going to also be able to give us a scrubbed version of her deck to send out to folks. So looking forward to seeing that. And again, thank you so much. And we'll give you a couple of minutes back in your day.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you for setting this up. Thank you, Laura. It's good to see you again, Laura.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.
I wasn't sure if I should stay on.
I know I usually wait until most people are off. So thank you so much again, Laura. We really appreciate it.
No problem. I'll make just a few edits, not many. I'm just going to take some of the personal pictures off.
Yeah, of course, definitely.
Your way. Thank you.
All right, perfect.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.